Hello class, so today we're looking at the question, what is metaphysics? So metaphysics is a philosophical term that denotes a number of varying perspectives. Metaphysics is a study of how we relate to the world and how ideas, concepts, facts, and objects are related to one another. So the key word there is relation, okay? So the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, after his death sometime in the 4th century BC, left behind a great number of philosophical books on the nature of being, existence, causation, particularity, universals, potentiality, actuality, parts and wholes, identity, etc. Of profound significance is the topic of the categories which designate the way in which we predicate things into subjects for consideration. Another way of thinking about this would be to focus on what qualifies and what quantifies something to be what it is. To consider what something is provides us with relationships to us and to things, and to how all of these things are related to one another. So the key word there for metaphysics is relation. The ancient scholar Andronicus of Rhodes, who categorized Aristotle's works, placed these books after Aristotle's books on physics. The term meta, meaning after, beyond, is simply after physics, after that which is physical, physica. This gives us insight into the content of the books on being, existence, causation, etc. As just that, beyond the physical. For you and I, this has to do with what is relational, how ideas, concepts, facts, and objects are related to one another. We should note that this is not a justification for relativism, given that metaphysics accounts for objectivity in relation to what is relative. To be clear, relativism is a metaphysical issue, yet it works within the larger structures of intersubjectivity and objectivity. So we'll get into relativism when we look at ethics, okay? So for Aristotle, form and substance are related to each other. Note the key word relation there again. Given that a substance takes on a particular form to be what something is, i.e., what is something? Whether something is made of stone is different if it is made out of paper, and a statue is a form of stone as much as a stone takes the form of a brick in a building. This is a metaphysical question, and it is ontological question. Ontology is the study of being. The limitation of physicality only serves to enhance our understanding of the metaphysical as beyond the physical. This summation of the beginnings of metaphysics as a fundamental feature of philosophical discourse would be missing something if we forget the significance of the negation of being, non-existence, what is not causal, what is not particular, non-identity, etc. And so what I'm pointing out there is that not only do we have to consider what is something, we also have to consider what is not something as well, okay? So it's not just the study into what is, it could also be the study into what is not, okay? So what else is metaphysics? A quick glance at a college textbook will typically offer another way to study metaphysics as the relationship between free will and determinism. Are we completely free? Are we completely predetermined? Is real life a composite of the two? What are the effects of biology and DNA combined with past events on our expressions of freedom? Does our freedom derive from the physical world? Here we can see a series of relationships. If we are to consider freedom, we must also consider what contradicts it. That is, what freedom is not. To know what freedom is not is to know what freedom is. Metaphysics faces the question of nothing. The controversial 20th century philosopher Martin Heidegger thought that metaphysics develops as a way for us to contend with the question, what is nothing? At first glance, this appears to be a banality. Yet when we stop to consider what is, as opposed to what is not, we get a sense of the profundity of such a question. This entails that we as living creatures have a tough time contemplating and conceptualizing nothingness. In fact, our fear of death encapsulates its philosophical weight into our basic consideration of being, of the being we possess alongside the being that is, reality on the whole. A negation of being is nothingness, that which is not being. This elicits anxiety within us as well as our thoughts and actions. The fear of nothingness impels us to the action of living, of being alive, of authentically experiencing ourselves as a being that exists. Metaphysics is the study of identity. Another perspective of metaphysics is identity, personal and of concepts and objects, of who we are and what identifies the world around us. How does our identity uphold throughout the duration of time? How are things identified as unique or universal? Is our identity based on memory or the memory of others? We tend to think that immortality is only an issue for religious consideration, while overlooking the importance of the written words by which to either keep ideas alive or to ignore them, thus identifying ancient authors long since gone. This brings us back to issues of quality of life, ethical and otherwise. What is the identity of goodness? What is the identity of what is not good? Religion as metaphysical. We are quickly reminded that all of religion is metaphysical. Religion is intertwined with what is physical, as much as a religious person looks beyond physical matters to take faith into what is real and practical in her life. If religious life serves its practitioners, it does so with the relationships between objectivity and subjectivity. Objectivity is all-encompassing, and religious life likewise has the similar scope and reach. The mistakes we make have to do with thinking that metaphysics is strictly limited to religious practice. I like to think of the reverse, that our metaphysical understanding of things gives rise to religious thought. Yet, I admit, conclusions cannot be strictly determined. Likewise, metaphysics leads our thought to the nature of evil as opposed to the nature of goodness, a way that pain, suffering, and death can arise in the world. We cannot leave this side of metaphysics without a sentence on a popular common sense view of metaphysics as a way of predicting the future, and identifying character traits that accompany celestial activity, sheer chance, lucky destiny, superstition, fortune-telling, etc. This is often an area of metaphysics that is not covered in philosophy textbooks, given that such activities are not often called into question. This is unlike what we usually do in philosophy class. Even if our concern is metaphysical, we still should be able to be skeptical and call into question its claims, joined with the use of our critical thinking as these ideas are put into practice, practical experience or not. Metaphysics is categorical. Another area of metaphysical interest is the notion that we want to know what is the nature of ultimate reality. We want to know what the nature of ultimate reality is. What in our lives is real and what is not real. We do not think of this as something. We do not think of this as something, and when we do think of something as not something. What do we think of as something, and when do we think of something as not something? As mentioned earlier, in Aristotle's Metaphysics, we find the categories which are ways in which we predicate things. In the earlier 20th century, Heidegger's teacher, Edmund Husserl, named this type of thinking categorical intuition. That is to indicate what something is. To predicate means to describe what a thing actually is. Essentially, when we predicate things, we are also considering things as a subject of thought. To name a quality of something or something is metaphysical. To name a quality of something or something is a metaphysical activity. To count, measure, and weigh things is to quantify items to be understood metaphysically. To situate a relation of things in time and space is to think metaphysically. To determine if something can be of use or not is basically a metaphysical consideration. Indeed, the need to categorize, name, give name to situate, to organize, to group, to isolate, to couple with, etc., all are metaphysical activities. Once we take these observations into consideration, we suddenly recognize that metaphysics is not a useless artifact, only handled with the confines of the written word. Put in its most basic terms, metaphysics is a conscious thinking combined with and without the physical world. Thank you, and I'll talk to you later in the next video.